Hello all. Today I wanted to talk about, I'm not going to do a movie review. I'm going to do a review instead of one of my favorite TV series, the 1967 cult TV classic, The Prisoner, starring and mostly written by Patrick McGoohan. It's a series that never seems to get old. I enjoy rewatching it over and over again. Even though I know every single line of dialogue and every scene by heart, I still enjoy it. Uh, I think its themes are just as applicable today as they were in 1967 when it first came out. And I do remember seeing it when I was a young boy because it was broadcast on American TV. Uh, it's basically the story of a British secret agent who resigns in the first scene, and then he is kidnapped to a place known only as the Village, where he's interrogated by a ongoing series of people known as only as Number Two, and each week there's a new Number Two, as they keep failing to break his spirit. They're trying to find out why he resigned, and they keep going at him. They try different ways to trick him and to fool him into revealing what his reasons were, and he never does. He will not break. He remains an individual in a society which is trying to quash individuality. And I think that theme resonates just as much today as it did back then, which is one of the reasons that it has such great longevity. The other thing is the fantastic writing, which was mostly done by McGoohan himself, but also with some great British writers like John Tomlin and Anthony Skene, who wrote another number of other really terrific series as well. And McGoohan originally he was working on a show called Danger Man, which was also about a British secret agent. And he became tired of it. He had done 54 episodes, 4 years. And he told his producer, Sir Lou Grade of ITV Television, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do something new. And Sir Lou said, okay, what have you got? And he went home and he wrote a 40-page outline for this new series, The Prisoner. And he was going to read it to, or he gave it to Lou Grade. Lou Grade was infamous for he didn't like to read things. He didn't read outlines. He said, just tell me what it's about. You tell me. I don't want to read it. And so he said, okay. And he gave him the concept, and he said, well, how much is it going to cost? And interestingly enough, McGoohan had done a budget for it, and he gave him the budget, told him how much it was, and he said, when can you start? And he said, I can start on Monday. He said, okay, the money will be in your account on Monday morning. And it was, and it took off from there. Originally, McGoohan envisioned it only being 7 episodes, and he wanted them to be like a serial. And that was it. That was going to be it. And Lou Grade said, well, I want to sell this to America, and I can't sell it if it's that short. I want you to do a full season. I want you to do 26 episodes. And McGoohan went back and met with George Markstein and a couple of the other writers and producers and said, we have to do more episodes. And they hashed out 14 episodes that had different themes. And they thought that was it. They couldn't really go beyond that. Eventually, they came up with 4 more episodes, and those became the last 4. And then they said, "That's it. We can't go beyond 17. The concept just won't work beyond that many episodes." So that's what they settled on. One of the episodes was shot without McGoohan because he thought that it was going to end at 14. So after they'd shot the 14th episode, he agreed to star in Ice Station Zebra, and he had to go to Los Angeles to film that. So he was unavailable to film 1 episode. So they came up with a kind of a clever idea that he had done a quote-unquote mind swap with another person, and that person played number 6 for that particular episode. And for the episode, it worked fairly well. Kind of an interesting James Bond-like episode, which I rather enjoyed. One of the there are several principal themes of The Prisoner. It was very weird. It was very psychedelic to some degree. It was obviously in some ways a Cold War parable. We never find out, where the village really is, though it was hinted in the Chimes of Big Ben that was in Lithuania, but we never get actual confirmation of that. It seems that it might be just because even within the plot, where he basically attempts to escape, and he's with the help of another prisoner known as Number 8, is played by a rather gorgeous lady, Nadia Gray. And it turns out that she's actually working with Number 2, and the whole thing's a setup, which we find out at the end. That episode's called The Chimes of Big Ben. It's probably my favorite, or one of my favorites. We don't really know that the village is in Lithuania. The whole thing was shot in the rather beautiful town of Portmeirion, Wales, which is on the east coast, and it is basically a village that it was constructed to be deliberately Italianate. It looks like the northern Italy, and it's made to look like northern Italy. And apparently the weather is very much like northern Italy. It's beautiful and sunny all the time, and there are these domes and spires and columns, and everything looks very Italianate in the architecture, which was purposeful, done by the architect, who was credited in the last episode, by the way. So McGoohan had already shot an episode of Danger Man, his previous series, in Portmeirion, and he said to Lou Grade, "I'd like to shoot it here. This would be the ideal place for it. It's this, idyllic kind of village." But of course, the irony is that the character, who is now only known by a number, is known as Number 6, can't escape. He constantly tries to escape. They're constantly trying to break him. The head of the village, known as Number 2, is constantly trying to get him to reveal why he resigned. He was a British secret agent. He resigns in the first 5 minutes of the show and storms out of an office and slams a teacup, and he's very angry. And he's going to go somewhere. He's planning for a trip, and all of a sudden, a very tall man, like a giant, passes knockout gas into his apartment, and he passes out, and he wakes up, and he still thinks he's in his own apartment. It's decorated like his apartment, but he's not at home. He raises the blinds, and he sees he's in the village. And the premise goes on from there, and they're trying to, they're constantly trying to break him. They want to find out why he resigned. You never find out, intentionally, I think, whether the people who are trying to break him are on, quote unquote, our side or their side, i.e., the Western democracies or the Soviet bloc. One of the points, I think, at the time was that they were becoming so similar that it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where he is, and it doesn't matter who the overlords of the village are. It's just about the individual will versus the the group, the overarching dictatorship, if you will, of the village that is trying to break him, and he won't be broken. No matter what trick they try, he manages to outsmart them. Some people have pointed out that Number 6 is not a very likable character. He's not really a hero. He's an anti-hero in that he is not working in the interests of the common good. He is working for himself. His goals are selfish, and everything that he is trying to accomplish, i.e. by escaping from the village, is motivated simply by the will of the prisoner to escape. The first act of a prisoner of war is to try to escape, and that's what he does throughout the series. Again, I won't spoil it. I won't go through every episode, though I know each one of them by heart. I really enjoy watching it. It has not aged at all. In fact, its themes are more relevant today than they were in 1967. If McGoohan thought that there was a quote-unquote surveillance society back then, and that people were constantly being watched and monitored and directed, he would be horrified to see what was happening today, which is a billion times worse, I think, than anything that was happening then. You look at your average, anybody who goes out in public today is videotaped about 10, 20, 40 times just walking down the street. You're constantly under surveillance. You are not, quote unquote, free, even if you think you are. And I think that was one of the overarching themes of the show, which still resonates very well today. I still enjoy watching the episodes. They're well written, well directed, well edited, well shot. Portmeirion is beautiful, and it attracts a large tourist crowd every year. They have prisoner festivals there every summer, I think, and they used to have a rock festival there also for about 10, 20 years. It's a very popular tourist attraction. It's almost impossible to get a booking there, but I've never been, but I have been to Wales, but I was not to Portmeirion. Um, and again, it's just really a good series. If you haven't seen it, you should. It's all available on Tubi for free. The only episode that is not available is not really essential, is there is an alternate version of the Chimes of Big Ben. All of the alternate scenes are available on YouTube, so you can see what the differences are. They're really not completely relevant, though there are some interesting choices. One is that the opening theme music was different. The music was written by Ron Grainer, who is most famous for composing the theme for Doctor Who, and worked with the BBC Radio Workshop. And he's really a great composer. But they did a slightly different theme in the alternate Chimes of Big Ben for the opening. Also, the ending theme the music is also different, and they had a different ending. The penny farthing bicycle, the wheels vanish and are replaced by an image of the Earth and the universe, and the Earth starts getting larger and larger and larger in the frame, and eventually it flashes to a red sign with the white word "pop" on it, like the Earth grew up so big and popped, which I think is kind of a psychedelic image. It's kind of cool, but doesn't really mean a whole lot. People, when the final episode Fallout came out, were disappointed to find out. The question always is, who's number one? The leader of the village is apparently known as number two, and is played by a different person in almost every episode, though Liam McGoohan played number two in 3 episodes, and is arguably the best. I love Liam McGoohan. I loved Rumpole of the Bailey. So I think was a fantastic actor, and was really good in the role, really seemed to relish it. But the question, like I said, was always number one. I think McGoohan was circumspect to reveal who number one is. And when he does reveal it, and again, I'm not going to spoil it for you, it's not something obvious. It's not oh, that's what's going on kind of reveal. It's something that has more to do with internal struggles than external. That's all I'll say at that point. It's not disappointing. I don't think it's disappointing at all. I think it makes logical sense who number one really is, and why, in fact, it doesn't really matter in the end who number one is. There are some clues, throughout the series that you can pick up, but yeah, I think the fact that it doesn't have a pat ending, here it is, this is what was going on, makes it a much more interesting series, because you have to think for yourself. There are a lot of fan theories that number 6 was, in fact, John Drake, even though McGoohan categorically denied it. And they have all these little facts, and I've basically checked all of them out, and none of them are actually true. One of them says that the card that's crossed out at the beginning shows Drake's face. Well, it just shows McGoohan's face. And that at the top of the card it says Drake. No, I've freeze-framed it. It doesn't. All it says are numbers, 3, 6, and 9, repeated over. They say that number 2 says the word Drake in one of the final episodes. No, he really doesn't. If you plot up the sound, he doesn't say it. Also, in The Girl Who Was Death, which is kind of a parody episode, he meets Potter, who was someone who Drake knew. Well, I think that's just kind of, coincidence. That's not any evidence that this character is John Drake. If he's not, and again, McGoohan pointed out there are a lot of differences. Johnny Drake was always portrayed as a very cool, calm, well-mannered person. Number 6 is angry. He's rude. He's loud. He's boorish. He's often petulant. And he's not really a hero. He's more of an anti-hero in that he's acting in his own self-interest. He wants to escape the village at the cost of anything. He doesn't really care about anybody else, unless caring about that person helps him to, quote-unquote, escape. And, in that, he's very much an anti-hero, not a hero, and he never really was meant to be. Anyway, if you haven't seen it, I highly suggest that you check it out. Like I said, they're all available on Tubi for free. And it still holds up today as it did, and there's a reason why it's got such a cult following.